You see my screen right now?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
All right. So I'm an architect, and like apart from architecture, I'm also trying to work with this natural cooling for built environment. So like we have come up with this product or the idea called Beehive sometime back, and wherein the whole I mean the reason behind this innovation per se is that currently if you look at the system, the way air conditioning and air cooling in the industry works, it's like it's a paradox. I mean, trying to cool our built spaces, we are actually ending up heating the whole planet with this heat islands that we are creating, the kind of emissions that we are generating, and then it's like putting a lot of load on the entire environment and the human species. Like one particular problem. I mean, 40% of the emissions that are generated in the world like come from the building construction industry, and of which this is one of the major proponents for the emissions. So, like, if we continue the same way, we'll be needing. I mean, these numbers are mind-boggling, but like maybe just another 10 new nuclear plants by 2050 just for cooling India. So, I mean, so I won't get into this thing, like I said, the specifics of why. I mean, the whole. I think we all know that what kind of a climate and weather that we have in India, but I would rather shift to the solution that we. Yeah, there is some disturbance. So I think,
Guys, can you please turn off your microphones, please?
yeah.
Guys, yeah.
Um,
Sorry about that. Yeah,
Done, sir.
carry.
Done. I switched her microphone off.
all right. So, sorry again. Yeah, this presentation. So what we are trying to do now is instead of actually moving further with this refrigerants and cooling, I mean the modern cooling systems, what we are saying is let's go back a little backwards and see how the traditional systems used to work back in the days. So Egyptians used to cool the pharaohs by pots filled with water and just fanning the surface of them. And then in India we have.
Monish, I'm sorry. I'm afraid I wasn't able to see the presentation.
Oh, I'll share it again. Um, can you see the? Let me share it again. Yeah. Do you see it now?
Yes. Now I can see.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is like, instead of like what we are proposing is that we go further by moving backwards and then trying to improve upon the systems that were once upon a time very predominant in the whole world. For example, Egyptians used to cool the space by filling the pots filled with, I mean, water and then just fanning the surface of it for cooling. Even in India, I think we have innumerable examples of how traditionally buildings are cooled in architecturally just by the way the building elevations are designed, like how you're trying to create these apertures inside the built environment to create some kind of a temperature drop in the built spaces. And there are many examples, like even other parts of the world, like Iran, they used to put a pot in the balcony and then with water and then actually channelize the air through it and get it inside. But then right now, like if we take the systems as it is, they might not be sufficient for us because, like I said, I mean these are all like systems that work traditionally very well. But then somewhere down the line, back in 1900 years ago, we lost track of the systems. I mean, even though they are done being used, but as such, technically the research and data there is not much being done, like how to improve upon the passive systems and the traditional systems that are there and move forward. So our objective is to somehow go back and then combine these traditional systems that are already that were working for thousands of years, and then add the technological advancements that we have in today's date, all the improvements in CFD and material science. We have like I think wealth of information and knowledge now, which was not accessible. I mean, which was not there for our ancestors. So our objective, the research primarily revolves around like how do you take up these traditional systems, combine it with software and analysis, the material research, and primarily Earth, and then make like systems that can actually suit to the present day needs rather than using them as it is. So how can we do it? So these are some of the projects that we have done. Wherein in a factory, this is the first installation that we have made few years back, putting it in front of a DG set, wherein we're passing this hot air through through this configuration, what we call as a beehive, and then we are pouring water on top of this, and naturally the air that was getting was cooler, and we used like some form of analysis, even though Earth is very difficult material to do CFD and get a consistency in results, but these can help us predict some bit of results, even we might not get accurate results. But the whole objective is towards how do we make Earth even such a non-homogeneous material? Like how do we start looking at it in a from completely different lens and start finding scientific inferences to our traditional knowledge? And these are some of the examples of how where we implemented this project.
That's in the Indian Institute of National
I,
Security.
yeah, this was in IASF. It was a science festival in Lucknow that we have done. This one. And this one was done for United Nations Innovation Summit in Delhi.
Okay.
We call it as a binary because the form looks like a binary, but we thought, okay, I mean, ones and zeros, but it also means that what if along with cooling, we can also get vertical greens. That's the design behind this, toying with the name. So this is what we did, trying to show that we can also have vertical greens with zero plastic and with earth. And some of the examples where we're trying to scale it down and put it down in like interior spaces and having these earthen pots with different configurations where like seeing like, you know, how where we can actually take earth in future. So this was one of our latest works where we have done a cooling system for an art exhibition wherein we are trying to, it's a radial system like what we call as a coral. So like how we can actually cool the room. So we managed, I think, this entire room to be done. So like, so we are trying different things. I mean, how like pushing the research towards this, while there is, I think, a long way ahead, but that's the beauty of it, what we're really enjoying. So can art spread climate awareness, social issues, and also promote traditional methods that survive thousands of years? That's our main forte, what we are trying to build our work on, that what really motivates us. So we have done like work like wherein we use reclaimed tiles, which are these are waste otherwise from a roof, and created these sculptures using again showing that okay, Earth can also be very contemporary and also modern, and the art forms can be very as much contemporary as possible. It's only the way that we build. And this is another pavilion that we have made at SPA using again terracotta tiles for like trying to show that okay, now these things, the form of this is inspired by pangolin, which is one of the most endangered species in the world right now. So trying to show that okay, now these buildings can both be artistic, but at the same time they could also mean something. We can also like pass on a message to the viewer rather than just being a beautiful form out there. We can talk about through art certain issues. Like in here, it was about endangered species pangolin. So that's what we wanted to convey through this. And yeah, I think in the pipeline we have there's some other work that's coming across. So
if you can, if at all propose what our students would be
yeah.
participating in. Yeah.
So that's the end of like what we are trying to do. So what I think this what I'm trying to do is
Please, voice again, please. Yeah.
yeah. So what we are trying to do now is.
Guys, can you please turn off your microphones? There's a lot of noise here. Yeah. Sorry, Manish.
No problem. So the thing is, see, the whole objective behind the work is to look at Earth from a completely different perspective. So what I'm proposing is a research on Earth to students that what if we can actually like study the material around us, because Earth, like even if you travel few kilometers, like 4 to 5 kilometers, the quality and the material Earth changes. What the material that we see, that we touch upon, the properties are completely different. So here, like the whole idea is to like the beauty of Earth is from agriculture se leke all like from bricks, construction, everything starts and ends in Earth, like including life as we see it. So the whole objective is that what if we get to the basics of it roots, study the Earth, the properties of it, start getting building the data that is actually missing right now for all the CFD analysis and everything, build a data that can actually contribute to the scientific community, wherein we can actually like push even Earth as a medium that is non-homogeneous towards like highly scientific experiments by engaging in research on the material itself. So I think the whole objective by the end of it, if we are able to collect different samples of Earth from all parts of the country and eventually from the world, and then start studying the samples is what I think I would like to do with you guys. Yeah, I think.
Uh, Thank you, Manish, and that's wonderful. Um, to the students, so here the subject under consideration or the problem we are dealing with is planet Earth, actually the temperatures of the Earth. And for that, we are trying to understand, observe planet Earth and establish a relationship so that we can address the problem of the environment and the crisis that we are going to face in the future. So it is just move ahead going towards your go from your syllabus to actually solving another problem. So, and there is a lot more Mr. Monish can contribute as long as there are willing learners, and we will have a peaceful conversation with him uh, on a face-to-face session with every researcher, every scientist. So now I request Ms. Nikita to take over the call and propose her project. Nikita?
Hi.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. I hope all of you are doing well. I'll share my screen. Before that, I just wanted to introduce myself. I am Nikita, and I have done my aerospace engineering. And I started my own organization, which was into promoting space education and, let them do their research and projects, them as in it's the students and the whole community. I'll just share my screen, what I have planned to do for this group. Share option, yeah.
I'm afraid, Nikita, it isn't being shared. So,
Yeah, 1 second. Yeah? Okay.
yes.
Great. I hope it's visible now. Yeah. So
Yes.
this is my organization, SSERD, Society for Space Education Research and Development. We are into a lot of space-related programs and outreach activities, and we also engage students into doing their research and projects and internships. So that is this. So it's called Internship and Project Division, wherein we have a few set of projects that we let students, school students do, and few for college students and few for general citizens as well. I'll just take you across. So I have this video of uh, a few students, school students who worked on a project to measure the ozone quantity that is there right above the Bangalore, right over here, with the help of this helium balloon, or it's called a stratospheric balloon. Now, what they learned over here was the way to do the research, the way to write their, or publish their research paper in journal, and also how to work in the team. I have this video. um, I will share this video link. Probably we might not have time. If I play this, it's around 4 to 5 minutes. If we have time, we'll come back and play. So around 5 to 6 students came together. These were in 11th standard, if I have to tell you all, from Oak Ridge International School, Bangalore, wherein they came together. They made this experiment, they made this scientific payload, or a circuit in simple words, which could measure ozone quantity. We launched through this, and then that payload was taken up to around 25-kilometer high, and then it was brought back down with the help of the parachute. So we got that data of how the ozone is changing, and then and we also, looked into the trends of previous years and the students actually made an analysis, and they wrote what could it happen in coming years, and they wrote they wrote the research paper. And now all these students are in abroad doing really good studies and all that. I'll share this video in the chat probably. And then another yeah, this is for college students, wherein we let them learn some skills that is required for them. So here we primarily focus on what are the different payloads that they can build by themselves as a student payload, which can be launched as a part of student satellite mission by ISRO and lot of organization who actually provide launch facility. This is one of the batch of students who worked on satellites, and then there are another set of students from another college who are actually working on rockets. So it is these kind of students who are supposed to come up with different ideas which could be made it work in a bigger way, where if you look at the new space entrepreneurs, all of them they started out as they were students, right? So it is right at this age where they had to explore a lot, and those research projects that you would bring in, see if it has business ideas or business model, then you actually get into entrepreneurship. That is the focus over here. And then another thing is for citizen scientists, as in for a common person, we engage them into this asteroid search or galaxies. So basically we keep getting data sets from the observatories, and these data sets are given to the general citizens, where they sit and analyze, okay, if there's any asteroid moving around, or if there's any new discovery that they can make and all this. It actually is so valuable, and in fact citizen scientist is helping the whole world in a different way, for for just the purpose of learning. This is one way wherein we keep everyone engaged. So if I'm talking about space, what exactly is space? Probably a lot of students might be having this question. I actually classify them into different categories. So one, I could say aeronautics and aviation, wherein we learn about aeroplanes, or unmanned aerial vehicles or helicopters. And aviation is nothing but a flying of these aircrafts. Okay. Aeronautics is where you learn about aircrafts, and you learn how to build it, how to work, how to make them work, and the design aspect of it, the building, all those things. Now, coming to space technology and innovation, as the pictures suggest, they are about the rockets, they're about the satellites, they're about the mission that we take for other planets like Moon, Mars. We've been to almost like so many planets, we've crossed our solar system. The technology that we use to reach out to these or to explore all those is nothing but space technology and innovation. Okay, and the third part is astronomy. Now, coming to astronomy and exploration, it's all about if there is any way that you could actually find out the life on other planets that is within our solar system, or which is way away from our our whole solar system itself, right? So that is one other work of it. And you look for uh, you look for possibility of life, and you look for some kind of you actually discover something and see some kind of reactions or things that would have happened long back during the whole universe was formed. Do you work on those? That is astronomy and exploration. Particularly astronomy comes with a lot of research, and space technology comes with research and building as well. So these are the main branches which I say. And then apart from this, there are a lot of other things which we say, like there is something called as space medicine, there's something called as
Space
space
experience,
law, space
architecture.
law, yeah, and space entrepreneurship. There are like so many things which we could actually connect with space. I heard one of the speaker talking about architecture. We do have something called as space architecture. Now, if I have to tell you the importance of space architecture, in another, let's say 10 years, we start going to other planets and we have to live over there. do you all think that we can leave or we can construct a house like how we have the houses here on the earth? No,
I don't
we
think
need to
so.
come up with a whole different way of building the houses there or shelters over there based on the atmospheric conditions on those planets. So you learn about the conditions and you build, you design the houses or the shelters. That's space architecture. So everything you say we could connect it to space because everything is space, right? We are also part of space is what I believe and what all the space lovers believe.
I'm sorry if I may interrupt. So students, like I said, whatever the speakers have said so far, there is one more point that I wanted to put here is we all work as an interdisciplinary unit. Like I said, see things together, be it psychology, geography that you're studying together. When they are seen together, you would then able to relate and understand it better in order to solve the problems. So I believe that, having said that, Nikita, so if we have had the projects, I would want Kunal has come in from Greece. I want him to fill in with 5 minutes talk as well. So if you,
Sure,
yeah,
sure. I have something very important that I wanted to share. 1 second.
yeah,
So, if we have to look at, or if I have to propose, or if anyone is interested into getting into research or projects into space, I think this is what you need to look at because these are something that's challenging or is very important. One is working on space debris, or how do we cut the cost down to go to, space, interplanetary travel, like we're planning to go to Mars. That is something really important, and life beyond the earth or life on uh, you know it's actually a little mistake. It's life beyond the earth. How could we live our life on other planetary? So there's a lot of work that comes into picture. Space Force is something really new, and then a lot of other things that are coming, like space agriculture, space food, space medicine, and all this. Importantly, application of satellite. You could actually think of some new ways of using the satellite data. That also is one of the research or one of the way that you could do the project. And this is a recent news that was released, wherein ISRO is looking for people or students or organizations to come up with their projects on these major topics. So if anyone is interested in it, do reach out to me. We could work on it. I'll just read out: radiation hazardous, and then space food, I was telling you, inflatable habitat technology or human robotic interfaces. Something more different is life support system, green propulsion, debris management that I already spoke, uh, 3D manufacturing technologies for space, and then space bioengineering, bioastronautics. You could just go through all these things.
yeah.
These are
If you could
different.
share that entire presentation,
Yes.
I will have it shared with the students. Yeah.
Yeah, so these are the different topics that ISRO is looking at. So we could actually start working on it because this is something that is going to be very, very, very important in the future. So if anyone of you interested in any of these things, we could actually form a team and then work on it and get some guidance from people from that field. So I was about to tell what Ravi just now mentioned, that I was studying in ISU wherein we had people from almost all kind of background, like starting from few were doctors, few were engineers, few were lawyers. All of us came together to work on a project, and that's what we want everyone to do it, even in our space related project. So we welcome everyone and anyone to join us, and that's our details, and that's my personal details. You could reach out to me anytime, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Nikita. Cheers. Kunal, before I invite Dr. Subbanna, can I have you to fill in with your wisdom as well to the students and what you have in the mind for the students, please?
All right, everybody, can you hear me?
Yes,
Ravi,
we
can you
can.
hear me? All
Yeah.
right. Hello, everyone. Sorry, I was a bit late. I was at work. Before starting, I'll just give a small introduction. I'm Kunal Naik. I am a space system engineer. I'm at the moment in Greece, working on some space project. Yes, so the idea about actually my colleague Nikita, she already have mentioned about the interdisciplinarity of the space. My idea was just to introduce the interdisciplinary in space in India, mostly in developing country. So we also have a similar kind of organization called the Space Talk, where we used to share the interdisciplinary that the space is not only for engineers, but for everyone. And I guess Nikita has explained already regarding the that space about aviation sector, aerospace sector, how the engineers, how medicine can be a part of it, how the business can be part of it, how the architecture can be part of it. So space is such a big thing that even if you think about any subject, that will include in space. So space is such a big sector. So when I feel really good that the interdisciplinary is coming at the moment in India. For earlier, it was not that huge. The problem is earlier when we talk about other countries, other space developed countries, for example, USA, Russia, we can say Japan. So all these countries, they had a very important thing in mind. Excuse me. Sorry to work. They had a very important thing in mind. The thing was they have started at a very early age with lot of interest, lot of ideas, lot of investments. But how these investments, ideas came into the picture at the very first moment. The thing is interdisciplinary. So at the very young age, students, entrepreneurs, they starting involving and getting used to each other, getting sharing their knowledge with each other, dipping themselves into the projects. So interdisciplinary was the main factor. So I guess though it's a bit late in India, but it's not the worst. This is the point where all the students can gather. They can start a project, and it's my bad part that I have not yet I didn't get really any time. That's my bad part. Sorry for that, Ravi. I was not able to come up with the syllabus at the moment, but I'm surely that me, Nikita, and Ravi can guide up. And with regards to space systems, with regards to small satellite projects, with regards to insights of a space sector, if anyone is thinking about abroad, if anyone is thinking in India itself, well, I'm not in India, so I'm in physical form. I won't be able to explain well, but any guidance regarding space, I will be very happy to guide anyone regarding it. I guess I will also have a word with Nikita while forming or making any new projects.
Yep.
And yeah, pretty much. So Ravi, if you want to pitch in any question, but for the kids, for the students and bachelors or masters or any of the speaker, if they have any questions, I will be very happy. Maybe on the later part, so as I don't mingle out with your time.
Yeah, actually, we have two more speakers to speak. So once after that, we will take the questions from the students. And if at all you're not available that time, we will post the messages on you. So that,
I'm so sorry that because I have a very hectic schedule at the moment. The European Space Agency, they have given the work and we have to finish in that time because it's a government project. They don't give us time. So I'd be very happy to connect with you all. Surely, when it comes to space, me, Nikita, and Ravi will try to sort out and put out new projects. It will be. I'm very excited to do it with everyone.
Thank you so much.
So yeah, that's it. So I'll be here for some time, but I have to go in a few minutes.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much.
Right.
And having said that, Dr. Subanna, can you please take over the call and address all of us?
Hello, can you people hear me?
Yes, I can. We can hear you. Please carry on.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to give a little introduction about me. Myself, Subanna. I am working as a scientist in Indian Council of Agriculture Research. Basically, I am an entomologist. So I am looking after the issues of different pest management aspects, like insect pests mostly. So my research area includes different sustainable as well as eco-friendly management of these insect pests that are posing problems to Indian agriculture as a whole. So first of all, I would like to thank Ravitesh for giving this wonderful opportunity and having a discussion with this vibrant minds as well as different um, experienced people. So if you see the present day Indian agriculture, so it is totally dominated by chemical inputs like this different nutrients, that plant nutrients like urea, DAP, those are all things they are, we are supplying those nutrients as a inert chemical materials. And at the same time, for protecting that plants, we are putting so many chemical pesticides. So literally being an entomologist, I have seen dumping of pesticides. So, if you see, food is the basic need for every human being. Whatever you eat, whether it is pizza or burger, it is totally comes from the agriculture. So, if agriculture itself is contaminated with so many things, definitely the human race cannot exist. So, if you see, uh, I just want to put you some, I just want to go through some facts, some two, three facts basically, that contributes Indian agriculture. So if you see the pesticide uses directly, in the last 10 years, it has increased more than 100%. The pesticide uses in the last 10 years has increased by more than 100%. And at the same time, agriculture land is getting decreased by 20%. So 20%, it's you people say it is not a big issue, but if you see the growing population, that growing population also needs food. So if you see the growing population, it is in the ratio of 30 to 40%, and land decrease in the ratio of 20 to 30%. So we will be left with a minimal land that can sustain the growing that has to sustain the growing population. So, and at the same time, if you see per capita water availability, it has decreased by 70% in the last 10 years. So per capita land availability for a human being itself, it is decreased by 70%, means you can see the water availability for the agriculture. So keeping these two facts, I just want to propose vertical agriculture. So this vertical agriculture that basically deals with the agricultural production by using no land. Okay. So no land means how we can grow a plant. That is the basic idea. So already there are hydroponic systems. That is hydroponics in the sense all the nutrients they will be supplied to the plants in the form of a water film to the roots. Actually, I just want to share 1 minute for the basics of the plant growth.
Yeah.
Simply plants they will absorb the nutrients from the soil, and taking that nutrients into the chlorophyll, they will be synthesizing their own food as well as our food by using the solar system. So that is sun rays. Simply that is the basic growth as well as the production of agriculture. So if you see the underground plants, underground parts, that is roots, they will be absorbing the nutrients. In our vertical agriculture system, that root system, for the root system, we will be supplying the basic nutrients in the form of roots like hydroponics. And at the same time, for growing, for getting the light, we will be supplying some what you call it is like a replica of the sun. Actually, the whole sunlight range, that wavelength what sun is producing, they will not be absorbed by the plants. They are having some specific wavelengths, that is like 210 to 260. That wavelength part is the only useful part that is absorbed by the chlorophyll for making the food. So that particular wavelength range of lights only we will be providing in this vertical agriculture. So actually, if you see, there is that particular system is more or less standardized, but there are so many modifications that can be imposed in this particular system to reduce the cost of cultivation. So that is the basic motto of the system. So if you can reduce the cost of cultivation, that is accessible to the each and every farmer of the community. So to reduce this thing, I just want to propose some 2-3 modifications. So that can be a researchable issues. The basic thing here is the what you call that, for growing the nutrients in the hydroponic system, we will be having a ready-made mix. That means that ready-made mix simply contain nothing like, it contains the macronutrients and macronutrients that is absorbed by the plants in the form of a salt that is readily absorbed by the plant. So these salts, they are also available in our compost. That means the organic material that is left over by the plant. Actually, we will be having the harvest. That is the economic part that is used as a food. But remaining like straw, leaf waste, those are all things can be composted. That compost is like vermicompost. You people might be knowing. Using the earthworms, we will be preparing the compost from the food materials that is left over. So that compost material is having the nutrients that is absorbed by the plant. So those nutrients that can be used once again for the plant to grow. So that is my basic idea. So we can complete a cycle, total cycle. Like economic part we will harvest, and the whatever the leftover part that can be used once again for the growth of the particular plant. So the by this way we can complete the whole life cycle. So here I just want to propose that uh, instead of supplying the nutrient in the form of readily absorbable salts, we will be using extracts like water extracts, simply water extracts of different compost materials like vermicompost and farmyard manure. These are all readily available. So extracts of these materials that can be used in the form of a nutrient solution for the plants to grow. That is the my basic idea, where I am planning for you vibrant minds for do the research in this particular issue, so that agricultural waste can also be tackled, and at the same time our crop production will be increased, and at the same time being a vertical agriculture which is under a very controlled system, we can we don't need to use pesticides.
Hello? Dr. Subanna, your voice is not coming through. Guys, can you hear? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes. Please carry on.
Yeah. So here, sorry for the inconvenience. So here I just want to propose like we will be growing the plants, and after harvesting our economic part, whatever the leftover agricultural waste that can be used as the nutrient material for growing a plant. So this is my basic idea. And at the same time, to reduce the pesticide load in our particular food, because of this controlled environment, definitely we will be having a minimal incidence of insect pests as well as other plant pathogens that are posing problems. Even though if you have, there are so many other natural enemies that can be used against these pests. That means they are simply like parasitoids, predators, and pathogens. Like in a simple way, if you say they are the non-vegetarian insects which will eat the insect. That's all.
Guys, so thank you, Dr. Subanna. I would like to fill in that bit. So here the problem that we are dealing with is the food and the chemical pesticides in the food.
Yeah, exactly.
And one more
Agricultural waste also we are managing in this one.
and agricultural waste and
Management.
the growing needs of the population and the reducing land area.
Yeah.
So that in order to address these problems, we are trying to relate to uh, what is actually food, how actually plants produce it, and trying to engineer around it in
Yeah.
order to meet the problems.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
the basic core is the same. So what we are, any of us, what are we are trying to do is we are trying to make you practice the thumb rules in many layers, so that you will become expertized in solving any problem, be
Yeah.
it a question paper, be it a life, so that you'll be, so that your entire learning will be accomplished. So having said that, thank you, Dr. Subanna, and I would request Master Sampath to address the audience, please.
Thank you, Ravitesh. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Master.
able to everybody listen?
Yes, we can listen, please.
Good afternoon to everybody.
Good afternoon.
Till now, we are listening to different types of developments in the physical existence of the human being, where the conscious state is approaching towards the improvement of the consciousness. So now I am C.D. Sampath Kumar. I was working as a quality assurance manager in the public sector undertaking Mecon Limited, and we are conducting yoga classes in our yoga center to make the conscious development of the human being. Very important thing is, lot of people understand yoga is something which cures the diseases, which improves our status of the life. So many understanding will be there, but really speaking, yoga is the conscious upliftment from animal level to the human being into the superhuman being, superhuman being Superman, Superman to the God himself. This is the state of the realization. That's what the yoga can help to the conscious level. So, yoga is nothing but the state of consciousness. Of course,
Master,
I don't know what is the...
Master, 1 minute, I wanted to say something.
Okay.
To those of you who does not know, Master Sampath Kumar is the only person in the country who is aware of the in-depth ancient practices which are becoming obsolete. So he is the encyclopedia of wisdom, I would say, that all our students has to absorb all his wisdom. So I'm sorry, Master, please carry on.
Okay, thank you. No, mainly what Ravi says, I don't know how much he... So that means the conscious level is to be improved, means some of the practices. So one is, somebody earlier starting, Dr. Mandala was telling, the corona is the very light in the weight. It is a 10 to the power of 18, 10 to the power of minus 18 grams. That means this is a very lightest energy level which is contribute to the disturbance in the universe. That means the conscious, now why I am telling this is, let us coming to the conscious level. Conscious is the quantum level when you consider. It is something called very 10 to the power of 93 grams per cc is the density of the quantum foam. This quantum foam takes the thought of individual and it goes round about the whole universe and come back to the same position within 10 to the power of minus 73 seconds. This is something greater than the speed of the mind. Just think, through yoga, we can contribute to the conscious level, to improvement, to self-realization. Of course, in our Vedic science, very important thing. Whatever the things which is happening in your universe, it is nothing but the conscious. Conscious is taking to the different forms and which going to happen in the universe. The group thought into the form of the conscious level and put into the consciousness, and this state of consciousness is working, either it is good or a bad. Why? The conscious has to be improved only on the path of good, because a human being in this physical body has to survive. To how to survive, how to take our lifestyle, to make our conscious effort, because whole thing in the universe is contributes only into the consciousness. Of course, the conscious state, the group or organization is a very important to follow. So our mind is very important to make our mind stronger and stronger and stronger. Yoga helps. This is the only thing. Plus, we have started with some of the alternative system of the healing. We cannot say we don't know this thing, we have to know these things and all that, because we are unaware of the things which is going to happen in the universe. But our main intention is to make our physical body strong enough so that our conscious level can improve. For that reason, we are transmitted into the alternative system of the healing. You may call it as a Reiki or a cosmic healing or a crystal healing or a Dharma healing, or so many healing methods or so many exercises. Make our physical body strong enough so that we can able to improve the immunity system in the body, so that the whole system, if the immunity is improved, from outside nothing can come inside. This is how the conscious works on our physical level and mental level. For that reason, some of the practices in Bhagavad Gita say pranayama parayanaha. Do pranayama, everything will be controlled. The highest state of the consciousness can be controlled by just practicing proper breathing system. Of course, we have some small contribution also comes from the meditation. So these are all the achieving the yoga, that is merging there is no individual consciousness. It is a universal consciousness. This universal consciousness is nothing but the built by the group of persons. Each person is a contributor to the universal consciousness. What you think in your mind, in the group, the strong will work in the universal consciousness. That's why everybody say, oh, think positive, think positive. Thinking positive, yes, definitely will help. But our main question is, by knowing ourselves or realization of ourselves, what is the use? So even if you don't know what yourself, you will be living. You know yourself, what the self-reality is, you are living. But the main problem is here. Everybody wants some benefit by knowing some spirituality. Spirituality is to know only what you are.
Master, Yeah, if we can wrap it up in the next couple of minutes, we will go for the question and answer session next.
Yes, yes. Just I will keep it really clear it.
Yeah.
This consciousness, normally what is supposed to be, can be changed or awakened in the physical body and mental body, and finally we achieve the state of self-realization. So of course, yoga and some of the alternative system is contribute to improve our consciousness. By telling this, the conscious state definitely can be improved. Whatever the way we can help in the practicing the yoga, alternative therapies, we'll be able to help contribute ourselves into it. Thank you.
Thank you, Master. Thank you. Guys, so having said that, I wanted to give you a quick recap of what happened in a nutshell so far. So we all know that we told you that the end motive of the conscious state organization is to empower our people. Taking from Master Sampath Kumar to Dr. Mandal, Monish, Nikita, myself, and students as a whole. So with few principles, we are making you guys and all ourselves practice the thumb rules in many layers, be it in the form of understanding your science, be it in the form of solving the problems of your question papers, uh, be it in the form of cracking the problems of IIT, civil services, NEET, be it solving the problems of a blind person, unemployment, or be it solving the problem of your own consciousness or our own consciousness. So it all requires, see, they say education is the capacity to confront the situations posed by life, and education is the progressive realization of your ignorance. And what's use of such a kind of education which fails to blend the character of a person? So in conscious state, be it at the layer of the school or the academy, we want you to become a powerful thinker by having equipped with the capacities that you require in order to deal with all the problems, not only academics, how to deal with the life, how to deal with the stress, how to deal with helping people who has problems, which would make you a better person, where total learning can happen, where you can become a person whom we can place you on a world platform like United Nations and all, and say, now speak, convey your voice. And it requires a layered education which empowers you in many ways. Understanding science, solving the problems of the problems using science, understanding spiritual qualities, understanding consciousness of your own. And so let us take a brief recap of how many people addressed what. I addressed how to learn. What are the principles of every learner or a mature thinker? And Dr. Mandal addressed what are the problems of a human body. And Dr. Mayank Jain, who is recreating life, he addressed, okay, if we understand what exactly life is, we can pour life back on by engineering it. And Monish, if we understand and establish a relationship with planet Earth and what are the problems planet Earth is suffering from, we can engineer the scientific equations to pour the life back in. And Nikita, if we can understand what is the external universe is telling us, we can make use of the information coming from them to establish a relationship with space. So is Kunal. And Dr. Subbanna, if we can understand what are the problems of the present day community about food and the reducing land area, and we can engineer the scientific equations of the planet Earth to address those problems. And finally, Master Sampath Kumar, if we can understand the problem of consciousness itself, we can establish a relationship with the consciousness by understanding it and solve the problems of our body as well as the community. So it requires many layers of understanding and establishing a relationship, which would add to your personality so that you would become a complete person that world needs, who can say things. So I hope you understood it, because it is difficult to make you understand years of wisdom that we have acquired in 2 hours, but we tried to put it in a nutshell so that you can understand, even a common man can understand and relate to the world of a person, of a professional, what we are dealing with. So we will have individual discussions with everybody. But what I want to say here is, yes, we are working as an interdisciplinary unit. Yes, we are going to have the capacities to crack IIT papers, NEET papers, NCERT syllabus, blind loss of vision problems, any problem of the community, of the world. And at the end of the day, we become finest human beings. So any problem, the principle is the same. We could keep on explaining you when you are at the base, but right now, please, we are ready to take your questions. So please ask if you have any to any of the people in the text format. Guys, you can turn on your microphones and ask, or you can put it on the text.
Hello.
Yes, please.
I have a question for Subanna, sir.
Yeah, Dr. Subanna, are you there? Dr. Subanna? Yes, dear, please carry on. I'm not sure. Yes, he is online.
Yeah, I'm there.
Yeah.
Tell me.
Sir, I wanted to ask if you can tell us something about vertical farming.
Vertical farming, it is just like growing the plants in plastic tubes. Okay, this is the basic single word sentence I can say. We are having some pots where we can keep the plant. Like there will be, I just want to say there will be a tube, long tube, in which the nutrient solution is flowing, and at regular intervals there will be some gaps where we will be putting the plants that we want to grow. Okay, above that lights will be there, and above that lights they will be producing the particular wavelength that is absorbed by the leaves. This is the basic structural vertical, that is the basic structure where we are going the plant. So like this we will be having layer by layer in a vertical this one arrangement.
I'm sorry, I want to interrupt you there. Students, I hope you remember our discussion yesterday about operating on a person who is dead. So we have to understand what is death in the first place, how we define death, whether it is stopping the heart or stopping the activity of the cells of a human body, right? So whatever Dr. Subanna is saying is, so sun is just an equipment like heart, which would produce a particular wavelength of light that will be absorbed by the plants. So as long as that wavelength of light is there, food production will be there by the plant. So if it is the sun or you or me, doesn't matter. As long as you can give the wavelength of that particular light that plant needs, food will be made. And it is not soil that we need. So how we define agriculture is what, that is why Dr. Subanna mentioned the basics of agriculture. So Dr. Subanna, please carry on.
Yeah, you understood the basic of the plant growth?
Yes,
or not?
sir.
Yeah, basic
So,
of the plant growth is simply I told like nutrients will be absorbed by the plant, and those nutrients they will be converted into food by using the sunlight. Okay.
So
So
is this
these
like
two,
helping reduce the cost, or is it just because it takes less area we can do it vertically? And
yeah, in less area, if you are having very good vertical farming facility, we can produce more than like 300% more food per capita of area. Okay.
300%.
Yeah, 300%. If you are having the more facilities, you can go up to more than 500, 600 also. Actually, it is like one row of plants we will be growing one above the other. Okay. In a vertical format, we will be arranging the layer of tubes, the plastic tubes, and one above the other plastic tubes will be there. So if it is the land growing means one row means only one row of plants will be there. But here one above the other, one above the other, like that, several plants we can grow. And at the same time, for nutrient uptake, a particular area will be needed for a single plant. Okay. Like
Okay.
for growing tomato, uh, say like 1 meter area is needed, where from nutrients will be absorbed by the roots of that particular tomato plant. Okay. But in our vertical farming system, there the area which needed by the plant is only 10 centimeters area. Okay. Got the idea or not?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
So having said that, I would like to fill in. So understanding is critical, be it psychology, be it political science, understanding what is death, understanding what is agriculture, understanding what is politics, what is psychology. So we are basically understanding the psychology of everything, so that we can, once you understand it, you would be able to relate to it and address it.
Yeah.
So that is the same principle that applies everywhere, be it medicine, be it IIT, or be it anything, engineering, everything. So any more questions, guys? Okay. So guys, anybody has any more questions? Fine. So I hope, just in case, if we will go for a recap of all of this. 1 second, we have another question from Aditya. As we can generate the light with the same wavelength like sun, which Dr. Subbana, this is for you.
Yeah.
As we can generate the light with the same wavelength like sun, which gives all the required nutrition and all kinds of things which it needs. So there isn't any difference between the light are made in between.
No, actually, out of the sun wavelength, there is a particular wavelength that is green colored wavelength only that will be absorbed by the plant. So that particular wavelength light only we will be providing. Actually, normal lights, if you are providing, they will produce that particular wavelength. But the main problem is it will also generate the heat. So that is the basic issue where we are minimizing the wavelength range that is produced by the that light what we are going to use. So that particular wavelength emission also, of course, it will produce the heat, but in comparison, the heat produced by that particular wavelength light is comparatively less than the wavelength light, that whole wavelength light, what we are generally using in our home.
Okay. I hope your question is clarified. So it is all about two parameters. Like I said, any scientific equation has a lot of parameters. And we have to adjust it around in order to orient it to the tailor it to the problem that we are dealing with. Say for suppose, A horse can only ride with four feet. It cannot run with 3 feet or 2 feet. So if at all one leg is missing, we have to give another robotic arm so that it can run. So whatever the parameters we have to adjust, like giving another feet or reducing the heat, which would enable the plant to take the wavelength and produce the food. Because any adjustment, it should not come with a price. Because at the end of the day, our aim is to produce food. If that is not being catered, vertical farming is of no sense. So we have to adjust the parameters. I hope you understood now. And I have another question. How will we be working on the chosen projects while the lockdown continues? So we are actually wanting all of our people in the base once the relaxations of the travel plans of the travel are lifted up. So we want our scheduled plan is to start in June with all the selected students to be in the base and start. And before actually starting the projects, you will have to learn all the research methodologies plus your syllabus and understand the documents that are being coming from the scientists, and then you go on. So we have fair amount of time before we actually hit the field, and you need a prep. So that prep, I think that will suffice, or that will fit in the window of this lockdown. And then I think by the time we hit the field, there will be no lockdown, I'm assuming. And now the rest is nature's grace. And Monish, are you there? Hello, Monish.
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, Monish. I have some questions for you.
Yeah.
Can the coolant be installed by us at our home balconies? And can we merge your beehive setup with vertical farming? Perfect. Great question. Yeah, we have a lot of questions rolling for you, Monish. So the first question is, I'm repeating it for you. Yeah. Can the coolant be installed by us at our home balconies? And can we merge your beehive setup with vertical farming?
It definitely can be merged with balconies and building facades. That's what we are trying to do. And vertical greens, we traditionally, that's the simplest thing, because earth and water, all the traditional pots that we have, plants, they're all made with terracotta. So combining it with plants is it's always been done like that. And in the process, by combining this with vertical greens, what we are also trying to do is to eliminate plastic. Like the professor was talking about this vertical greens with this, just explaining about it. With vertical plastic baskets, our objective is to just eliminate that. The whole process will be the same, but then in the process also get both cooling and also manage vertical gardens. It can be. It is totally doable, and we are doing it in one place also.
Oh, that's great. I think that's a great question, Shobit. I think we have to try. We have to tailor one of our research project that way, I guess. That way, our people will understand about linking the dots and patterns better. So,
Ravi, I have one question for Monish.
Yeah, Monish, you have a question from Dr. Subanna.
Okay.
Hello.
Please. Yeah. Please
sir, your presentation is very good, and beehive concept I have already seen. But I just want to know one thing: what is the average temperature difference you got from inlet to outlet?
So it entirely
average temperature.
There is no average aspect, because it entirely depends on the relative humidity and the temperature outside. The difference.
Okay.
So I'll tell you this one very basic thing, like the way it works. So as we know, I think everything boils down to the wet bulb temperature of water that we are using for pouring on this. So in
Okay.
here, like when the external temperatures are beyond 40 degrees or something, it's not so difficult to bring the temperature drop to even up to 10 degrees to bring it to 30.
Okay.
But I think it's a hell of a task to bring it from 30 to 26 if the wet bulb temperature is 28 or something, you know. So
Okay.
like depending on the wet bulb temperature of this, the temperature drop can be this, but there is no singular average as such. So like in winters, we have seen like, you know, the drops to be very different. I mean, because already the temperatures are really down. So there, and the variation is very different. And in monsoons, the temperatures are the humidity is different. So the average temperature is different. But like comfortably, I mean, I'll tell you, if I have to summarize this into one singular answer, what we are trying to say is at a human comfort level, like what a body can tolerate is from, I mean, as a good temperature to work with, is from 24 to 30 is something our bodies are like really like adapt to, comfortable.
Okay. Okay.
Like that is scientifically saying. So what we are trying to say is that with natural systems, we can even touch upon that 30, 32 is I think what our bodies can tolerate. So like if you can bring it up to even 30 degrees and reduce the dependency of air conditioners and all, on a peak summer day, I'm not talking about a comfortable day. If we can bring it up to even 30 degrees when the external temperatures are beyond 40, 45, that's what our end goal is. So, but since we have only done like 15 to 17 or 18 projects so far, what we are trying to do is replicate this in multiple climates and various zones to get the feedback and see how the system can be improvised upon.
Okay. One more thing. Your system needs continuous water flow or?
No, it can be cycles because terracotta is by default porous and it can absorb this water. So what we can also do is we can pour water, we can create cycles so that it remains wet for some time, and then we can reduce the temperature. So here, another thing that we are just working with is not just delta T. So we are also checking, I mean, with all this analysis that I was talking about, like how we can also design the geometry in a manner so we can also create this pressure difference, delta P by like Bernoulli's principle, like, you know, how the the air expansion can happen when it comes out. So we're trying to combine work with a combination of both to like get the variation in temperature.
So based on the weather conditions, we will be cycling the water.
Yes. But that's what we are doing now. And yeah, and we're also like trying to figure out, because as like, you know, the psychometric charts and all of that that exists for this drawing the relationship between temperature and all of this. So we are checking how we can regularize. So far in the evaporative cooling world, like trying to get this kind of a control on the water flow and how to optimize the water is not done so far properly, like to the highest degree, because the variables are too many. There are too many variables. So now, like, we are checking, I mean, how with all the research and everything, how we can actually get, how we can actually have control on the water flow as well. So reducing the water footprint, basically. So
okay, thank you very much.
Okay, I have two more questions rolling in for Monish. That what is the temperature to which the Beehive configuration can cool a room? That is number one. And number two is that, as you said, that we can have modern architecture with traditional materials and natural materials. Are these durable constructions, or do we have to compromise on anything?
Yeah, I was also reading the comments here. The first answer, so bringing the temperature from, like I said, 50 to 36 is, we have done that. It's not really a task. Like I'm telling you, because we are using water at like room temperature or something. So 15 degrees drop there is like, sounds quite a lot, but it's not, because it's possible and it's very easy. In fact, it can be even better. But the point is, when you talk about a room, like I just answered, that bringing the temperature below 30 and everything is actually the key thing. So bringing the temperature there for a room. So we have done it in large scale spaces and industries, cooling. So, but as such, because we are also a very young enterprise, so like we haven't tested it in too many indoor spaces, but which is what actually we are doing right now. So there is no singular saying the temperature, like an air conditioner, we can say it can bring it to that temperature. Evaporative cooling is a very natural process, and the results are very like varies quietly, like even for a single room every day, because the RH values and the temperature areas outside, the results are not consistent, and then there's a lot of variation. So it's very difficult to answer that question. If you ask me to what temperature the room can come, there is no answer to that. And talking about the consistency of the product and how durability it is, so I think there, like this terracotta, and like even if you look archaeologically, terracotta has sustained, like even if you figure out right now, like if you have the right temperature and the firing is done in a proper method, the life of it can actually go to hundreds of, I mean, even 100 years. So there is no way the thing, but provided the firing is done at a the proper temperature. If it is underfired, we have seen cases in 3 months' time, the entire our installation collapsed. I'm not kidding, like, because it involves water and everything. If it is underfired, underbaked, so the system fails even within 3 months. But then it has the potential. So we are also trying to figure out, like, not figure out, actually, there is a lot of science and research already there for that. How to get the right temperatures. There is a lot of work already in this field to get the right consistency of the material. Yeah.
Okay, so is that why we are understanding the earth from different areas?
Yes, exactly, because earth, if you look at like even ceramics and terracotta, there is something called the firing, cone of firing. So as the cone changes, the temperature variation, the material like properties like completely change. I mean, from
and they
like,
can withstand more temperatures, right?
Yes, as increased, there you must have heard the variations of bone china, porcelain, like the ceramics. There are a lot of variations that are there. So that there are many things that are possible because temperature plays a major role in the consistency of the material and the quality. So
I think I have something interesting for you here. Last time when I was speaking to Kunal, he has shown me some of the material that is from Mars or some other planet. Wow. He has that material that we can from his lab. He has a little, but we can, if at all, we can observe it. I don't know. I think if we can produce such kind of thing, if it can withstand more temperatures, maybe that would be a good breakthrough.
That will be amazing because, I mean, for testing for sure, I think it'll be exciting to do. But the beauty of this material that what we are working with is because it's already fired at, like, even a basic terracotta, not even talking about ceramics. Terracotta is fired at like 700, 800 degrees by the local potter, like a regular potter that we come across on a batti in a kiln. So basically, what it means is that our temperatures in peak summers go only up to like 50 degrees or something, right? Like even in the worst case scenario. But this material is already fired for that. So nothing is going to happen to it. Unlike you look at evaporative cooling pads and other materials, they disintegrate really fast because they are almost like, they do not have that kind of a life. So terracotta by default already has a good life. Just that we can maintain some really good consistency and everything by making sure that, like, when things are interacting with water, the properties change. Like with the growth of this biofilm, moss, and everything, it has the material behavior totally changes. And very, very interesting that we guys actually came across, I would like to share because we were talking about vertical green some time back, is that like when terracotta and water, they come together over a period of time, there is this biofilm that forms on the surface of it. It's a very natural phenomenon. The reason why we throw the pots, the drinking water pots after 5 to 6 months, we throw them away because there is a thin layer, it looks almost oily layer that forms inside. But that biofilm, and if you actually amplify the process and grow the moss on top of this, it also can actually enhance the air quality. They absorb the carbon dioxide from the environment and then reduce, so the whatever air that you're getting inside, it can both be cooler and also the quality of air it gets enhanced. So there is I mean, that's the beauty of natural materials. There's a lot that we are, I mean, I think there's a lot beyond even our understanding right now.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Nikita, are you there? So I have a question. I do, if at all Nikita or Kunal is not there, I will have this question through to them, but I have an answer for this, dear. Could you explain how space studies can be collaborated with political and social sciences? Yes. So my previous discussions with Kunal and Nikita, there are also subjects called space economics, space law, and space politics and all, because by now people are actually talking about the jurisdictions in the space. So, and not only space, dear, there are regulatory bodies who go on making laws everywhere, and as simple as a label that you find on your tablet, it has a clear story behind it. Why? So one of the important things that I would like to tell you is storytelling is very important in our conscious state motive, because it would enable you to understand the concepts better. How laws in social sciences and political sciences have been prepared has a clear story behind it. Similarly, as for the political and social sciences in the space, they are right now making laws towards that of every jurisdiction in the space. So I will have you placed with Nikita and Kunal to give you an in-depth detail about it. But yes, they can be collaborated. I already have had a discussion with Kunal about this before, and I'm sure in her presentation with Nikita, Nikita also has mentioned about space law, space economics, and space architecture, everything. So, yeah. I hope that answers your question a little, but we would again meet. Nikita, I think she left for another session. Dr. Mayank, are you there? Hello. So I have some of the questions that are addressed for Dr. Mandal and Dr. Mayank, who are in another conference, dear, and it is already 4:10, so we will have to discuss with these questions with them personally in another session. But Monish, I have 2 more questions for you. And Master Sampath also, we have a question. First, I'll go with Master Sampath. Master, have you been a part of researches in yoga, and what exactly do yoga PhD research is about?
Research on the yoga, when you talk about the research, but something which is unexplainable. Actually, conscious is developed on practicing the yoga, and it is actually it is happening, it is there. Now we have to understand what the conscious is. Whether conscious is there or conscious is not there, subconscious, unconscious, no conscious. But yoga, on the basis of yoga, when you want to go for research, on the basis only physical manipulations. What are some of the asanas you do, some of the pranayamas you do, you get rid of so many problems. This is what the research can be done through yoga. But it is not a research done through yoga, it is research has been done through a particular sadhanas of yoga. Either pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi, asana, satya, ahimsa, asteya, apurika, like that. These are all the sadhanas. And these are all applied only to, as you said, research is taking place, how it helps the people to survive their proper health. Asisto, dridishto, balistaha. Now, the main problem is what we are doing through yoga research, whether it is this disease vanishes or this problem solves, that's all we are doing. When you talk about the research, but strictly speaking, outcome of this we are unable to explain to the normal persons, general public. It is only a self-realization yoga. But of course, because of our requirement, our physical requirement, our universal requirement, we are inducing some yoga practices, asana practices, or pranayama practices. So this problem is solved. Yes, it is going to solve. There is no doubt about it. So like that, so many things which have been achieved.
Thank you, Master. And I have two questions for Dr. Subbana and Mr. Monish. I'll go with Monish first. Are the structures can be disassembled, okay, dismantled and reassembled? Maybe that is the question. The beehive structures or whatever it is.
Yeah, they can be totally, they can be both ways, assembled and disassembled. Like, I mean, one, you can make it permanent. And what I mean is, you can also make it like a permanent wall, of course, and you can also make it temporary, and it's totally doable. There's that the design will be different, but it is possible.
Oh, thank you. And I have a very interesting question for Dr. Subbana. How come gravity does not affect the geotropism property of plants? Are you by any chance relating this to the vertical farming, or it is just a question on its own?
Yeah, relating to the vertical farming.
Okay, Dr. Subbana, can you understand that question?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, geotropism, that is the basic governing factor of the plant growth. Actually, I have just now only I have given a message regarding the clarification of that particular question. So it's like geotropism, it will work on different plant parts that is totally dependent on the plant species. Actually, in general, if you see plant roots, they will be having positive geotropism. That means they will grow inside the soil. So it is positive. And at the same time, shoots, they will be having negative geotropism that grow against the gravity. And at the same time, if you see within the same species also, there are different varieties which are having leaves that is inclined towards the soil, and at the same time there are varieties which are having the leaves that are facing towards the sun. So that is totally dependent on the plant species as well as the variety we are growing. Okay, I think
Yes, sir. Yes.
it's answered.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we will wrap it up right now, guys. Thank you for the time, and I hope you understood everything. And so you should be able to relate to everything right now. And if at all you can't, try to understand what happened from the beginning. My introduction, the rules, the speakers, conversations, whether the principles apply there, whether the principles apply, whatever the problems we are solving using the research composites, or understanding and observing and establishing a relationship. These can also be applied on a question paper, because if at all you're reading a Rabindranath Tagore's poetry of English literature, or a chapter of your NCERT syllabus, or even an IIT question paper or a civil services question paper, you should establish a relationship with how the person who is designing the paper or the problem, like vision, because your problem is not the paper, the person who designed it, or the question in itself. Unless you understand and establish a relationship, you won't understand how they are thinking and what you have to do to get what you want or address a problem. As simple as that. Having said that, thanks all of you and all the students of the core group. We will meet on our WhatsApp group and WhatsApp call. So thanks, speakers. And any questions, you can always shoot us an email or on my WhatsApp. And more speakers are coming in. And we will also have 1 hour long sessions with individual speakers. And yeah, that's basically it. I think our first meeting is a success. All the best, guys, and let's get to work. Cheers. Bye, everybody. Bye, everyone. Thank you, Master.
Thank you.
Thank you, Monish. Thank you, Dr. Subanna. And thank you, Dr. Mayank. Thank you, Nikita. Everyone. Thanks, my students, all the time.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Bye. Let's disconnect the call, guys.